I was in the 9th grade, my friends and I liked hanging out at this big, old cemetery. It was only a 15-minute walk from school, so we would often go at the end of the day, or even for a bit during lunch. There were some fast food places right nearby, so we'd often grab a bite and have a little picnic amongst the stones. We were a slightly alternative crowd, but we honestly didn't pick the cemetery as a hangout spot to be dark and mysterious. It really had some lovely places to sit and relax. There were many tall trees throughout the property, providing plenty of shade. There was even a large pond on the far side, with a half-dozen benches around its perimeter, where you could sit and watch turtles paddle by. Yes, it was a beautiful location that just happened to be a cemetery, and the slight spookiness of sharing the place with the countless dead only served to keep most people out and make it even more peaceful for us. There was only one rule at the cemetery: you had to be out by 6 p.m. There was a tall, spiked iron fence surrounding the entire place, and the only entrance would be locked up at 6 p.m. on the dot. Starting at 5:30, the security guards would hop in these little smart cars and make their rounds, looking for any stragglers and usher them towards the gate so they wouldn't get stuck inside. The 6 p.m. deadline never proved to be much of an inconvenience for my friends and I. Like I said, we'd often go during lunch or hang out for a bit at the end of the school day, 3 o'clock p.m. We'd usually be gone around 4:30 or 5 o'clock. That was until one fall evening when we messed up. It was actually my fault. There were 4 of us hanging out at the cemetery that day, an overcast, slightly chilly day in mid-October. My 3 friends and I had walked over after school with a few things we'd grabbed from the vending machine. We'd wandered into the far side, parking ourselves by the pond, where we sat on the wooden benches and enjoyed our snacks. For some reason, I don't remember exactly why, we stayed a bit later into the afternoon. I think it was after 5 p.m. by the time we started making our way back to the large iron gate. We were just about there when I instinctively reached down into my pocket and felt that my phone was missing. I had suddenly noticed how the pocket in my hoodie felt lighter than usual, and my suspicions were confirmed when I reached inside and felt only lint. "Crap," I said. "We have to go back. I think I dropped my phone somewhere." "Back?" my friends replied. "All the way to the pond?" I tried to think of the last time I remembered having my phone. Yes, it had been back when we were sitting by the water, where I'd snapped a few pictures of the scenery. The trees were starting to turn, and the hint of orange foliage had been reflected in the still waters of the pond. My phone must have slipped out when I stood up to leave. My friends agreed to accompany me back to the pond. Though it was beginning to turn from late afternoon to early evening, we figured we still had enough time to grab my phone and make it to the main gate by 6 p.m. We made our way back to the water, as the freshly fallen leaves crunched beneath our feet. We were still laughing at this point and generally having a good time. A few minutes later, and there it was, my phone sitting face down on the cemetery bench. It was right where I'd suspected, next to the pond. By this time it was after 5:30, and getting to the gate by 6 was starting to feel like a tall order. I grabbed my phone, and the 4 of us set off, adopting a brisk pace as we followed the path through the rows and rows of weathered headstones. It was then that one of my friends first noticed something strange. "Well, at least we're not the only ones here," she said, pointing across the pond. The rest of us turned to see what appeared to be an old man standing by the edge of the water. As he was on the far side, it was hard to make out any specific details, but he seemed to have long white hair and a long gray coat. Now, while we did occasionally see other people wandering around the cemetery, it was odd to encounter someone so far from the gate around closing time. The four of us wondered for a moment if he might be lost or something, but he didn't seem to be in any kind of distress. He just stood there, completely still. It was hard to tell in which direction he was looking. If I squinted my eyes, it almost felt like he was looking at us. We left the strange old man by the water and continued back to the gate. The sun was starting to feel quite low in the sky, and it cast long shadows across our path through the cemetery. None of us had ever been there so late in the day before, and we all started to get slightly creeped out as the various headstones fell into shadow, their smoothed over but still intricate carvings rendered far creepier in the evening light, or lack thereof. We passed by a few mausoleums along the way, and I got chills at the sight of an especially detailed weeping angel carved into a large grave marker right next to the path. The elements had taken their toll on the angel's surface over the years, leaving dark, stained streaks on the stone. On the angel's face, they resembled tears. As I noticed the now literally weeping angel, I was struck by just that. I had never noticed it before. Were we going the right way? The rolling hills and many winding paths of the cemetery made getting lost a distinct possibility. No, everything just looked so much scarier in the dark. The setting sun was just making our familiar hangout spot feel like a completely different place. I convinced myself I was just overthinking things, and we continued onward. Eventually, we got back to the gate. It was over 12 feet tall, with spikes at the top of the vertical iron bars, and stone columns bookending the entryway, which was unfortunately shut. It was 6:06 as we arrived at the gate, and there was a big metal lock holding the segments together. "Great, now what?" one of us asked. "Are we stuck here overnight?" No, I replied. "There's got to be a security guard still around, or at least a groundskeeper or something." We all looked in different directions, hoping to see the security guard's tiny smart car approaching from one of the many paths leading back into the cemetery. Okay, surely this isn't the first time this has happened, I thought. They must have someone on the lookout for extra stragglers. By now it had gotten quite dark, and there were absolutely no lights on in the cemetery. The air was cold, and a slight breeze swirled the dead leaves around our feet. We were just beginning to see if we could scale the spiked iron gate when my friend Emily called out from behind me. "Oh wait, look! Here comes somebody!" We all turned and looked back into the crushing darkness of the cemetery. "Where?" I asked. "I don't see anyone." There! Emily pointed back behind a row of stones way off in the distance. I squinted in the direction. Wait. There was something moving. I tried to adjust my eyes to the lack of light, but with the sun now beyond the horizon, it seemed to be getting darker by the second, and my eyes felt like they could barely keep up. Then, I saw what Emily was pointing at. Walking behind the stones was the old man from earlier. His long white hair stood out in the darkness, and I could just barely see the outline of his gray coat. Again, the darkness obscured much of my vision, but he seemed to be walking. Strangely. Almost as if he wasn't walking at all, but more like floating. He was bizarrely still, even as he moved through the tombstones. "It's that guy from earlier," I said. "The one by the pond." The path he was walking took him parallel to us, but was about to connect to the main road of the cemetery that led to the gate. "Why is he walking so weird?" Emily asked. We all watched in silence as the distant figure glided through the stones and the trees, his movement uncanny in a way that I have difficulty describing. Flash! A brilliant white light temporarily blinded me, and I remember I actually screamed out loud. "What are you kids doing in here?" a deep voice called out. Took us a moment to get our bearings. It was a security guard, pointing a flashlight right at us. "Sorry," we said. We didn't mean to." "Uh-huh, sure," he replied. The guard lowered his flashlight and walked over to the gate, unlocking it for us. He ushered us out one by one, uttering a gruff, "Just don't let it happen again," once we were all outside. He started to lock the gate back up. "Wait," I called back. "There's someone else." I pointed back to where the strange old man had been gliding down the path. My eyes had to adjust once more after getting blasted by the security guard's flashlight. Once they did, though, I could see that the old man was gone. The guard scanned the path with the bright beam of his light, harshly illuminating the old tombstones and the twisted trees. "Who? I don't see anyone." The four of us all insisted in unison. "He's back there, we all saw him." The guard turned back and did another once-over with his flashlight. The old man was gone. Though my friends and I continued to protest, the guard wasn't having any of it. His scans with the flashlight had revealed nothing, so he got back in his car and drove off. We all waited for a moment by the outside of the gate to see if the strange old man might emerge from the darkness, but he never did. We never heard anything else about him. I did some research on the cemetery online, and though it had a few ghost stories, just like any cemetery is bound to, none of them mentioned an old man with long white hair and a long gray coat. To this day, it remains a mystery. Ooh, another twisted tale of terror. It would be quite scary to be locked in a cemetery after dark. They do need those gates, though. After all, people are dying to get in. Anyway, I guess that's all for now, fellow ghouls. Do come back and see me again sometime soon, and I'll be sure to have another true scary story waiting for you. Until then, good night.